Hello everyone. uh, Thank you for joining me on this beautiful day. I'll try and not witter too much, but if I do go off in a tangent, I'm sorry about that. Go away. Okay, so what I'm going to be covering in this is watching wildlife, how, you know, just generally how you can uh, attract them into your garden and hopefully being able to watch them. The kind of equipment that can help, though, to be honest, watching wildlife in your garden, you don't need anything really. But these are just bits and pieces that might just add that little added extra to what you're doing with them. When it comes to watching mini beasts, sometimes you want to try and catch them. So I'll show you how you can make them really cheap, some equipment to help catch the mini beasts. Light traps, how to make a simple light trap to attract moths and other creatures at night. If you want to try and keep some spiders or worms, especially if you've got some children love to see the spiders weaving their webs inside and the worms. So if you want to do that, I'll show you how to do that. And then at the end, there'll just be some credits and further reading. So watching wildlife. Well, the best thing you can do is just stand still, be quiet, and watch and listen. And just don't try and identify the things around you. Just enjoy the sound of nature. Sometimes naturalists, we get too hung up on trying to identify what we're looking at and forget just that essence of being able to just stand there and listen. Having spotted, having stood there and listened, you might want to observe, see what they're doing, see if they're moving around, just stood still. Are they flying? Are they hovering? Just observe what they're doing and take it all in. And then if you spot something that you are interested in, follow it. Follow it and see where it goes and keep watching. That's how you learn how to identify things, is by watching and listening and just following and picking them out. Best time to do it today. Here are me making you sit inside when you should be out there doing what I'm talking about. Well, hey, hopefully you can do it when I've finished in half an hour, 45 minutes. Still humid nights without a moon are the best time for a light trap, because what your light trap is, it's actually acting as a fake moon, and the animals are attracted to your light because they think it's the moon. But if there's a moon competing with it, like a full moon, you've got not much chance. At the moment, we're moving into a full moon, and I'm not getting much in my light trap. But hopefully, in a couple of weeks' time, when we go back into the moon starts to wane, then hopefully I'll be able to catch a few things. Incidentally, I'm actually catching a lot of cockchafers at the moment, which are big, ugly-looking beetles. So, what kind of things are you going to be watching and looking for? Well, birds, obviously. You could be listening to the birds, you could be watching them. Actually, at this point, I'll just mention, if you have got bird feeders, then you want to be thinking about what you're doing with them. At this time of the year, it's best not to put peanuts or seeds out. The best thing to put out is mealworms, because even little birds like tits and sparrows that feed on seeds and nuts, they don't give them to their young in the first 2 weeks. They give them insects. So if you put out lots of insects, then those young have a much better chance of seeing their way through those first 2 weeks. You can get more details on the RSPB's website as to what their current recommendations are. However, one of them is to move the bird feeder regularly. Personally, I prefer to put my bird feeders over some paving that can be washed down rather than keep moving it around. But that's just personal preference. You can look for footprints in the mud, in the snow, anywhere where you are. And when you're out walking, look for footprints. The uh, FSC, they've got a wonderful one of their ID sheets on footprints, and there's also one of these webinars on looking for traps and trails. On that point, another thing to look for are holes. Look for holes. Do they go straight down? If you see a small hole about the size of a 50p piece and it's going straight down into the ground, it's likely to be a bank vole. They have a U-bend at the bottom so that the nest doesn't get wet, even if rain does go into the hole. If you find a grassy nest and amongst grass, it's probably a field vole. But again, there's another webinar on that's taps and trails and nests. My favourite, Dung. Yeah, if you know what you're looking for and you get used to it, Dung can tell you an awful lot about what animal it was and what it was eating. In Dung, I'd also classify pellets. Not just owls that cough up pellets. A lot of bird of prey cough up pellets. I have a sparrowhawk that sits on the edge of our house and coughs pellets all over our path down the side of the house. We're regularly having to clean it up. But I can tell it's a sparrowhawk without even seeing it because it's got bits of feather and insect cases in it. But I have seen the sparrowhawk quite a few times. Listening's always a good thing, and not just for birds. You can listen for insects. Here's a grasshopper. I apologise for any older people listening to that. I know that it's one of the first things that goes when you start losing your hearing is being able to hear those high-pitched sounds of the grasshopper. Strangely enough for me, it's gone the other way. I can't hear deep sounds, but I can hear the high sounds. My wife can't hear grasshoppers and hasn't for about 10 years, but I'm not going to tell her that. She'll think I'm trying to say she's old. Badgers. So they make that kind of high-pitched, creaky, clicking noise. And this is a young one. That noise was actually from a young badger. And birds, of course. Listening to birds. When you listen to birds, you could just sit there and listen to them and just enjoy the sound. But if you want to try and identify them, the best thing to do is to listen carefully and then try and see if you can see the bird that's making the call and use that. This is a wren. That's its song. They also make a clucking sound like you're being told off, and that can be heard for about a mile or more away. And it always makes me feel as though they're telling me off. So you're listening for buzzing, crunching, snorting, squeaking, snuffling, all sorts of weird and wonderful noises out there if you just stand still and listen. So if you want to try looking for things, go out there and actually start searching for them rather than just standing there and listening. Logs are a good thing. Old logs, turn them over, see what's underneath them. Stones, piles of stones, especially around a pond. If you've got a pond, put some loose piles of stones around the edge and you'll get frogs and newts and toads, hopefully, living in amongst them, and other animals as well. And never be afraid of bramble. Bramble's good, but obviously not taking over the garden. Another thing, corrugated iron. Sheets of corrugated iron on the ground, they cause the heat to the ground underneath to heat up very quickly. And so any creatures like this common lizard could be under there and basking in the heat, ready to start moving. If you do turn corrugated iron over, always be careful because it's not just common lizards. You do get adders under there And I always, I get strange looks when I go anywhere because I often turn things over, and I get people going, no, 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 don't, adders, adders, adders. And then they look at me really strange when I say I'm actually looking for adders. But yep, I turn them over with a stick and keep a little bit of a distance in case there is an adder that could strike out and bite my hand. Another thing you can do is an old piece of carpet, just a small cut off, put it on the ground, leave it there. The vegetation underneath will die and it'll become sort of bare ground, and you'll get all sorts of things under there. If you're in the right place, you'll get slow worm, but just about any garden or any park will have things like centipedes, millipedes, woodlouse. If you're going to be going to Dan's webinar later this week, he'll tell you all about that sort of thing, the kind of things that you'll find. Key thing though, if you do turn something over, put it back. Bear in mind that it's some animals, the roof to their home, so make sure you stick it back where you found it. Now, throughout this, I'm going to be mentioning some simple experiments you can do. And here, one thing you can do is do all three. Put a piece of carpet or corrugated iron or something down, put some stones, put some logs, and see what different mini beasts you find underneath them. See if you'll find if they're the same things under them or if they're different. Another thing you can do is, especially with logs, put one down for a few months, let it rot down a little bit, and then get a brush off all the creatures and put them under a new log out of the way. So there's absolutely nothing under the old log. And then check the old log every few days and see what might have actually moved in. There's not much point in doing it with a new log because it takes a long time to mature, to be a nice home for them. But if it's already had a lot of creatures living underneath it, new ones will move in. Another thing you can do is Darwin's old experiment, Charles Darwin's experiment, which is to put a brick, broken pavement, a log on some bare moist ground and measure how much it disappears into the ground. Because what's happening is the worms underneath, they're eating the soil and causing little voids as they tunnel through the soil. And something heavy will cause those tunnels to collapse and it'll sink a little bit. Only a millimetre, 2 millimetres to begin with, but the more the worms you have under there, the more it'll sink. You could always do it in a big bucket. Get a big bucket, fill it with soil, put lots of worms in, stick something on the top, and again, see how it goes. If you want to attract birds, then there's a few things you need to think about. One is make sure you can actually see the bird feeder. There's no point in putting it somewhere where you can't see it from a window, or you've got to go outside because you'll just scare the birds off. So place it in view. Place it away from fences in the house and ideally away from trees, because the last thing you want is the neighbour's cat or even your cat to be able to jump off a wall, off a tree, onto the bird feeder and have a good chomp. Cover nearby though is good, because if the birds are scared, they want somewhere to go. So not so close that the cat can get on, but close enough that if the bird gets scared, it's got somewhere to hide, and they're more likely to come and use your bird feeder then. Of course, squirrels are another problem. I'm sure a lot of you seen these videos of convoluted tunnels and all sorts that people build to try and keep the squirrels away. There's no harm in doing that. It can be good fun. And I'm sure the squirrels enjoy it as well. Seasonal feeding. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. At this time of the year, give them mealworms. In the summer, don't give them anything. Let them go out there and forage. The young birds need to learn how to forage. And if the parents keep taking them to your bird feeder, they don't learn how to forage on their own, and they think that the only source of food is your bird feeder. So should you move or be ill and not able to feed them, then that generation of birds won't know what to do. So mealworms, March, April, May, when the young are young and the adults are feeding them. July, August into September, don't give them anything. And then through the winter, if the weather's really bad, obviously feed them constantly. But if the weather's okay, then only feed them for a few days. So only put enough food in to last maybe 3 or 4 days. Leave them empty for a few days and feed them again. That way, again, they don't become reliant on your bird feeder, and they'll go off and learn how to forage for themselves through the winter. Keep them clean. There's a disease there's a disease going around which is in the droppings, and if you have a flat bird feeder, that's more likely to collect droppings. Underneath the bird feeder is where droppings can collect as well, and that's why the RSPB are recommending you move the bird feeders so that the birds are not running the risk of getting the disease from eating seeds that's covered in bird poo. However, I think it's far better to put paving slabs down and wash them down, because you can always wash them down with disinfectant as well and give them a good clean. That's far better, I think, than moving the bird feeders. But key thing is keep them clean. Okay, you want to attract mammals. And this one's not so easy. Not everybody has badgers that can come into their back garden. But bear in mind that the vast majority of mammals you're going to attract are diurnal or nocturnal. That means they come out at dawn and dusk or overnight. So if you want to see them, you need a security light. Ideally, put a red filter on it, then the animals won't notice the light, though they will eventually get used to that light coming on when they walk up to the food and be okay with it. Make sure they can get into your garden. At the moment, I don't get any mammals in my back garden. We've got rabbits and guinea pigs, and we once lost a pet rabbit to myxomatosis because a wild rabbit had got into the back garden and passed on the fleas. So we now keep the back garden totally sealed off. So there's only our pet field vole that lives in our shrubbery that can get into the garden, maybe mice as well, but it won't stop anything. Our garden stops anything from rat size up. Give them dog, cat food, water. I used to work at a field centre where on the first night of a residential, he'd put all the scrap food out, the chips, the cheese and onion pasties, the meat pies, everything went out, and a horde of 7, 8, 9 badgers had come and feed on it. But he only ever did it on the first night so that they didn't get used to the fact that they were going to get this, and because it's not particularly healthy. Dog and cat food is much, much better than our scraps. The thing about that, though, was what amazed me. They jumped a 4.5-foot wall to get into the garden, to get at this food. And they'd done it so often, they'd worn a groove in the concrete on top of the wall. Amazing what badgers will do. Don't give them milk. I know it's people used to always say, give your hedgehogs milk. Don't. They're lactose intolerant. Most mammals are lactose intolerant. Dogs are supposed to be lactose intolerant, but nobody's ever told my dog. It loves milk. But yeah, best not to give them milk because it can cause problems. Okay, let's think about attracting some birds and bats to the garden. Well, the obvious one is the bird feeders and bird boxes. General bird box is a tip box. You get them in 2 sizes, a smaller hole and a larger hole, depending on what you want to attract. So if you want to attract blue tits, you have the small hole. If you want to attract great tits, you have the bigger hole. If you want blue tits but don't want great tits, put a metal plate over the hole, because the great tits will make the hole bigger and take over the nest. They'll even kick the blue tits out. If you want robins or wrens, you want an open box like this. That's their favourite type of box. And then you get the specialist boxes. Sparrows nest communally, and so they like nest boxes with extra holes in, because they nest communally but like to have their own entrance. So usually there's 3 holes, so that would be for 3 pairs. Swift boxes are similar, but they nest communally but don't mind using the same entrance, and so they just have the 1 hole. And if you notice, the hole is actually not round, it's oblong. And there's a reason for that. It's because of the way the swift approaches. It approaches with its wings open and only closes them right at the last moment. And so they need that extra little width for their wings. Swallow boxes are just a cup. House martin boxes, you put them underneath your eaves and they need a lid, unlike the swallow box. If you're going to go really fancy, then you go birds of prey boxes, kestrel boxes, barn owl boxes. Part of what you'll get at the end of all of this is a link to the various websites where you can find plans to make your own of these. Because to be honest, it's a lot better to make your own than to actually go buying them. Bird boxes want to be facing north or east. They don't want to be in direct sunlight because the little babies can fry. So make sure it's in a warm place, but not facing straight into the sun. Bat boxes, however, they want to be facing the sun because the bats want to be warm. You'll notice there's no hole in a bat box, or no hole like a bird box. It's just a slit at the bottom because the bats come in, turn vertically up and into the inside the box. Dead simple to make a bat box. This is just 3 planks of wood, some little bit of beading to create a little gap, and there'll be 3 lots of bats in there. General instructions for all of them. There's a link at the end of this presentation to the government's website telling you about recommended products for treating the wood. You need to make sure that you use that, because if you don't, then you could actually be poisoning the birds. Place them about 4 meters above the ground. That's really just to keep the cats away. Ensure a clear flyway in and out so that they can, a lot of birds actually like to sit in a shrub a few meters away, look around, make sure there's nothing there, and then go into the box. So it's a good idea to put it on a wall, close to some shrubbery like that, but not so close that your cat can get in it, especially with the open boxes. It'd be just like canned cat food. Quiet, undisturbed position, fairly obvious, and angle slightly down so that rain can't collect inside. This is something a lot of people don't think to do. In fact, some of these aren't doing it either, and these are pictures from the RSPB. You don't want, especially with the open boxes again, the rain to be coming in and causing the birds inside to get cold. Of course, if you live in the right place and you've got bird boxes like these, you never know, you might even get dormice in the winter. So they're all things that are easily done. You can make them yourself and they're not going to cost you very much, if at all. Here's some equipment that will cost you money and can add that extra little thing to it, but it's not totally necessary. So binoculars. If you've got your bird table just a little bit too far from the window to see, you might want a pair of binoculars. Just a simple pair if it's in the garden. You don't need anything fancy like Swarovski or Zeiss. Just a cheap pair to be able to watch the birds. Bat detectors. You could just stand outside and watch the bats flying around. But if you actually want to know what they are, you'll need a bat detector. The Bat Box 3 is an excellent one, but there are much cheaper ones than that. And you just have to tune the frequency until you start hearing the click, 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 click of the bats. They start about £40 for one that you can make yourself, and pre-made ones start about 60. The other one, the red one, that's a really fancy one. You're looking at £350, £400 for one of those. But what it does is it plugs into your phone and it records the bat call. It produces a sonic picture of the bat call that can be recorded, and it will even tell you what bat you're listening to. So it's more for a professional who has got that kind of money. Then there are nest boxes, nest box and security cameras and trail cameras. These are always wonderful little things. So this black and white picture there, this was a picture I picked up off my security camera of an alien landing in my back garden. It's actually a spider right next to the lens, but I always think at the end there, it looks a lot like Patrick the starfish out of SpongeBob. If you've ever seen SpongeBob SquarePants, you'll know what I'm talking about, otherwise you won't. Mammal traps. This is a Longworth trap. These are expensive. They're about £60 each, but they're the professional top of the range things. You can buy cheap ones for about £5 on Amazon, which are great, the little plastic ones, but what you do need to do is check them regularly. Probably not a good idea to leave them out overnight. Put them out as it's going dark, and then as you go to bed, go and check them, because if you leave them too long, being plastic, the little mouse or vole or shrew inside will chew its way out, and then you've lost your trap. And then some other expensive equipment. There's computerized microscopes, which are really good for if you're looking at mini beasts. You can take some of them out into the field. The things that look like binoculars are actually night vision camera. So you can watch creatures at night without having to put a light on. And then the one on the left is a trail camera. And the dog. The dog is there because she's expensive. She's been to the vet 3 times, and I don't know, I hate to think how much it's cost us, because she keeps breaking into cupboards and eating chocolate and raisins and all sorts. But she's excellent when it comes to finding things. If there's somebody walking past, she goes woof, 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 woof. But if she sees something like a hedgehog in the front garden, she looks at it and goes woof, woof. Or if we're out walking and she sees something, she just does a single woof, and that tells us that there's something there that she thinks is unusual, doesn't know, and we'll go and have a look, and we'll quite often find hedgehogs or something wandering around in the garden. Our previous dog, though, it was a lurcher, and it never learnt that hedgehogs hurt. Every time it found a hedgehog, it would nuzzle it, try and turn it over, and come running in yelping. So its way of telling us there was something there was to come in yelping and tell us it's hedgehogs. Or once it found a baby rat and carried that into the house like a cat. Stupid animal. If you want to know birds, a bird sound, and pictures and bird identification, there's nothing better than the Cornell Lab, the Merlin website. You can put a photograph up and it will tell you what the photograph is. You can record in real time and with your phone, and it will tell you what you're listening to. I was in Greece recently, and it did 100% both photograph and sound. It's an excellent, can't recommend it enough. So you want to attract mini beasts. Moving on to the little creatures, flowers. Nice, big, bright, showy flowers. Nice wide range of species as well, because some insects are attracted to some flowers, some are attracted to others, especially colour. Some are attracted to pink, yellow, white, blue, what. So make sure you've got and try and plant your garden so that you've got colour for as much of the year as possible. I feel like a gardener now. I don't know what the new ones are, but I was thinking Percy Thrower, shows my age. Plant in sunny areas, because the sunnier it is, the warmer it is, the more chance there'll be insects around. And of course, if there's insects, you're going to get birds coming in to feed on them. So it can attract those as well. Shrubs, bushes and trees, same again, really. Choose ones that flower. Nettles and brambles are absolutely fantastic for insects. If you can put a corner of your garden to one side, like we do, where you let the nettles and the bramble grow, just keep it under control. You can always put it in a bucket so it can't spread. But it will bring in lots of insects. However, there's absolutely nothing beats a good buddleia. A nice big buddleia. They are the bush for insects. Okay, health and safety. Obviously, don't go licking the nose of a pig. Wash your hands. No eating. Hands away from face. They're all very obvious things to be doing to make sure that you can't catch anything from the creatures you're handling or seeing. Try and avoid picking them up. If anybody's worried, this is not a British insect. This was taken in the Amazon. It's a whip scorpion. No, we don't get anything quite as big as that. Clean your traps regularly. Again, you don't want them getting clogged up and messy, because then the insect, and certainly don't want them really getting wet, because then the insects will stick to them and die. A key thing to remember is food chains. If you've got a pitfall trap like this cup one, and you get a beetle in there, especially one of the bigger ones, and other things fall in, when you come to look at it, all you'll find you've got is some big fat beetle and nothing else, because it'll eat it. So ladybirds eating aphids, ladybirds as well fall in there, they'll eat all the little ones. Consider the weather. Warm and dry is the best time to be doing this. If it's wet and you've got some pitfall traps out, make sure they're well covered so the rain can't get in. And throw a bit of vegetation over the top, because that always hides it from the public if you're actually doing this in a public place, but it also attracts more insects because they don't see it as being artificial. Having found some insects, how are you going to look at them more closely? Well, one of my favourite things is spy pot. For this, you need a couple of drinking cups, some polystyrene tile or soft tissue, cling film, and an elastic band, and a pair of scissors. On the top of one of them, put the polystyrene tile or soft tissue and cut it to the size of the top of the pot. Then cut the top off the other one so it's got a big hole in it. Then over the hole, put some cling film, hold it on with the elastic band, sit it on top of the one that's got the soft tissue or polystyrene tile, and you've got a spy pot. So you get your little creature, you put it into the one with the cling film on, upside down, so that it's sitting on the cling film at the bottom. Put the other one in on top, turn it up, and you've got the insect trapped between the cling film and the tissue or polystyrene tile. And because both are soft, you're not going to harm the animal. And you can have a look at it, take some photos, look at it through a microscope or a magnifying glass, and enjoy. You can get fancy ones like these with magnifying glasses in the top. They're great, but they sometimes can be quite costly, like £5 or £6 each. So making one for next to nothing can often be a good thing. Pooters. Pooters are great for actually catching your insects. So a pooter, you need a pot, a plastic pot. Best thing, I've got straws here because they're easier to see, but the best thing to use is the tubing that you get from an aquarium shop or a pet shop for the aerators, because the hole is that bit bigger so you can get bigger insects in. Bit of blue tack, fine mesh and elastic band. And so what you do, you make holes in the top of your pot, put the tubing or straw through the holes, seal them off with the blue tack so that they're airtight. Make sure the end of one of them, the end that's inside the tub, has got a bit of gauze on, an elastic band to hold the gauze on. That's important because you're going to suck, and you don't want to suck the insects up. So you suck the one that's got the gauze on it, so they can't come up into your mouth. And you hold the other one over the animal, and hopefully it will get sucked inside the tube. Again, you can buy them, and again, they're about £5 each. But making them is more fun, if nothing else. But again, make sure you suck that pipe with a mesh, not the other one. So as I say, you place the pipe with the mesh, without the mesh, over the insect and suck the other side. Avoid overcrowding. Try not to get too many things in there. Do not suck things that are too big to go up the tube. So when you look at it, often ladybirds are too big. You're looking for smaller things with a pooter. If it's bigger than a pooter, it's probably going to be quite slow, and so you can catch it in your spy pot. Avoid slugs and snails. They leave a horrible trail behind, and anything else that you catch will get stuck to that trail. Oh, and it's hell to try and clean off as well. I'm kind of retired now, but I used to do a lot of work with children, which is why I've got sort of professional looking ones. And they'd put these slugs in, and I'd spend hours cleaning the slug slime out before I used them again. Catch spiders and other insects that are going to eat other insects separate, just so that you don't end up with spiders and nothing else. Unless, of course, you want to watch the spiders eating things, then, you know, by all means, catch them and watch them chomp on or spin them around, their webs around them. And most importantly, do not suck up ants. When an ant is frightened, it gives off formic acid, and formic acid tastes vile. It smells bad, but it tastes even worse. So try and avoid ants. Another piece of equipment, a sweep net. So this is for when you want to look at what's in the long grass. To make one of these, you've got a metal coat hanger, a old pillowcase, and staples and a stick. So bend the coat hanger into a circle, like it shows in this picture here, and then put the pillowcase, the open end of the pillowcase, around the circle of the coat hanger and staple it in place, so that you end up with, like this picture here, a bag stapled to the frame. Straighten out the curve bit on the coat hanger, push it into a cane and put some strong tape around to hold it in place. And then you've got a sweep net. And these sweep nets are just as good as the professional ones that you can see next to it. If you want to make a really fancy one that's going to be much stronger than a coat hanger, if you've got an old tennis racket, or you can sometimes buy really cheap plastic ones in pound shops and things, take out the net area and do the same thing again, stapling the pillowcase bag onto the frame, and then you've got a frame that's just as strong as a professional one. This is my son when he was 4 years old using one of my sweep nets. He's now 20 and quite embarrassed about it. Here you'll need a sweep net, a white tray, and your pooter and spy pot to catch things. So you do your sweeping, avoiding bramble, because bramble will tear the bag. When you've done the sweeping, grab the bag at the top. This is to stop the creatures coming out. Professionals have a fancy little flick of the wrist, which if you want to try, you can try it, but it's not. It takes a lot of getting practice to get used to it. Far better to just grab the top, then shake it, and if you hear a buzzing, let it go, because you've got a bee or a wasp. So hold it a long way from your body and turn it upside down so the bag turns inside out and everything flies away, and then do it again. If you don't hear the buzzing, empty everything into your white tray. Some of the flies will fly away, but mostly you'll be able to see what you've caught. And think carefully again about where you're putting or what you're catching things in. So if it's large, use a spy pot. Small can be used a pooter. Another thing you might want to do is beat the vegetation. So here you tap the trees, knock creatures onto a white sheet or an umbrella. Again, ready with your pooter and spy pot to see what you've caught. An experiment here is try different trees and try different heights in the tree. See if you've got different creatures living there. But very often the creatures in trees can fly, so you've got to be pretty quick. Pitfall traps. These, you need 2 cups, trowel to make a hole, and some stones. So you make a hole, put one of the cups in, put your second cup inside that one, because that's the one you're going to lift out and look at what's in there. Put some little stones around the edge, so there's a tiny little gap that the creatures can go under, because on top of that, you're going to put a bigger stone. It's good to use a stone because it's nice and heavy, and little creatures recognize stones as something to hide under. Experiment here. Try it in different habitats. Try it in a woodland, in a grassland, in a boggy area, and see what kind of different things you find. And if you're going to put food into there, to try different smelling foods to attract them. If you're doing this professionally, often you'll put antifreeze in the bottom, because you might have 20 or 30 of these on the go, and so you can't be checking them regularly. So you'll put antifreeze in the bottom. That kills the insects, and then you can look at them more carefully. But I've always tried to avoid doing that. I've only ever done it a couple of times. I'd much rather check them regularly. Light traps. Simple light trap. Put a great big sheet on a clothesline, shine a torch on the other side, on one side, stand on the other side, and watch the moths get attracted. They think your torch, again, as I said before, think it's the moon, and so they'll come and land on the sheet, and then you can look at them, and you can catch them in your spy pot and have a closer look. If you want something fancier, get a bucket, a funnel in the middle of the bucket, a light source, and into the bottom of the bucket put some egg cartons, because the egg cartons, what they do is the moths cling to them because they're nice and rough, and they'll stay there and sleep and won't necessarily try and fly away. If you want to buy one, if you go on eBay, there's a gentleman there, is an old entomologist, an old person, insect studier. He makes them, and he makes them for half the price you can buy anywhere else. This is one of his. Another thing you can get is get these cheap ones where you put a piece of rotting fruit inside at the top, or you spray it with moth pheromones if there's one particularly you're after trying to catch, and the moths will fly in but can't get out again. As I said, keeping worms, spiders, these are great fun, especially with kids. or kids at heart, like me. Large jar, put a spider in it with some sticks for it to cling on to, bit of damp sponge on the bottom for it to get a drink, and just watch it build its web inside. Feed it a fly every so often. Alternatively, you can just let the webs in your shed or somewhere develop and watch. This is one I found in my shed, which didn't last very long. It went, because it's a daddy long-legged spider. You might see it in the top left-hand corner. They're a spider with very, very long legs, and they eat other spiders. So if you've got an infestation of long-legged spiders, you're not going to get anything else. So we tend to evict them, put them out somewhere else. Worms, great to keep worms. Jar, a coffee jar will do. Put some soil in, put your worm in, keep it damp, and watch what happens. Even better, do what we've done here and make layers of sand and soil, and the worm will mix them up, and you'll get to see how the worm is making its tunnels and mixing up the soil. So finally, how can you find out more about this sort of thing? Well, if you can find a copy of Roma Oxford's Mini Beast Magic, it is the best book. There's 2 versions of it, both just as good as each other. It tells you how to make all the things I've been talking about, plus lots of other ways of catching or studying insects in your back garden. It's designed for wildlife watch groups and schools, but that doesn't mean you can't do it yourself. And then if you want to identify things, the Field Studies Council's ID sheets are really good. As said at the beginning, at the moment, you can buy them. These 3 here, the garden bugs, the butterflies and the ladybirds, you can get for £10 instead of 12. The link to the bats, this will all be sent to you in an email. And then the bug boxes, bird boxes and bat box plans, we'll send you a link to the website for those as well. So I hope you've enjoyed that. And if you have any questions, then let's see what we can do. Can't promise I'll answer them, but I'll try.
Oh, thank you so much, Graham. That was really great. So many tips and tricks on how to attract various different types of wildlife. I'm sure if anybody is keen on one area or one specific species, they've got everything they need there. So we have had some questions come in, and I do recommend if anybody's got any more to quickly put them in the chat. So Becca has asked, what other safe ways are there to find snakes?
Snakes.
Yeah.
Really, the only safe way to find snakes is to put something down that they're going to go under, or just walk around in the countryside. If you want to, well, actually, yes, there is other ways. Adders and slow worm, they like to go underneath, and lizards like to go underneath corrugated iron or even bits of carpet, as I've mentioned. But if you want to attract grass snakes and you're in an area where there are grass snakes, the best thing you can do is have a compost heap, because grass snakes will use compost heaps to lay their eggs. The compost heap will stay warm no matter what temperature's outside. A mature compost heap will stay warm and an even temperature, and the grass snake will come and lay its eggs in it. And that's one way of attracting them. And even better, have a pond, because grass snakes like to swim. Their favourite foods are frogs and toads. which, of course, if you want to attract frogs and toads, might not be the best idea to have a grass snake. But yeah, ideally, a pond with a nice mature uh, compost heap that they've got access to. So not one in a bin with a lid, an open one that they can get into. So hopefully that answers that one.
Brilliant, thank you. Um, so the next question we've got from Avril, and they've said they have got lots of hedgehog dung in their garden and they put in a hedgehog house, but how can they encourage them to use it?
You can't really encourage them. What you can do is you can fill it full of hay, and so it's nice and warm and cozy. Uh, you can, when it comes to autumn, put a bit of food inside, but don't leave it in there too long, because if you're putting meat, it'll rot. So probably better to actually use dry dog food or dry cat food if you're putting it into the hedgehog box. And hopefully they'll smell that, go and investigate, find its nice warm place with lots of hay to cuddle up into, and they'll stay there. It's just a case of really putting it in a good place. A good place is somewhere sheltered so that it's not going to have too much temperature change. So sheltered under some, if you've got shrubs or bushes, put it underneath there, and that'll help try and stop any major temperature changes between in winter. Say put lots of nice hay or straw in it for it to cuddle up into, and give it a bit of food to attract it into it. If you do put moist dog food or cat food in, then just make sure that if it isn't getting eaten, remove it and replace it so that it doesn't rot. Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you for those tips. So we had a couple of questions regarding mealworms when feeding birds. So someone's asked so this is L Roberts, if dried mealworms have any nutritional value. And then kind of related to that, Heather's asked if it's okay to put dried mealworms in like soaking in some water in a little lid.
They'll eat the dried mealworms as is. They don't have the same nutritional value as live mealworms. So, for example, if you're mammal trapping, you put mealworms into your trap to attract shrews, because shrews eat insects. And what you do with those is get some live mealworms, stick them in your freezer, and then put them into your trap. And it'll take all night for them to thaw out and start moving. But if a shrew goes in there, it's got live mealworms, which are far more uh, nutritional value than the dry ones. But the dry ones are better than nothing. And the dry ones are just as good for baby birds as the live ones.
Great, thank you. And then someone has asked, well, a few people actually have asked if you could just put a reminder on the eBay seller that you mentioned for the moth traps.
Right. Yes, we'll put that into the email that gets sent out, because
Brilliant.
I'll have to dig it out
Yeah.
from when I bought it. Sorry, I just realised I didn't answer the question about soaking them in water. I've never come across that. It's not something I've ever done. And on the top of my head, I would be just a little bit concerned that the wet mealworms would grow a fungus more quickly than a dry mealworm. I think that's the only thing I would say about that. I can't say it will, because I've never done it and I've never heard of anybody doing it. But that would be, straight off the top of my head, that would be a concern. Uh, better to feed dry food to birds because wet food can grow poisonous fungi. Uh, uh, um, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a lot to consider, isn't there, when
Mm,
feeding birds. Um, and then Heather has asked again, which somebody has given advice in the chat, but I'll put it to you, Graham, to see what you can suggest. So Heather has tree creepers in her garden, and she's put out wicker hanging nest boxes for them to use, but they
hmm.
tend to rot within the year. So she's
Yeah.
asked if you've got any recommendations on what are the best nest boxes for tree creepers.
Well, they do like wicker ones as well as long-tailed tits as well, like those wicker baskets because they both make their nests out of bits of moss and small leaves and things. They don't make a solid nest. Uh, and to be honest, I think really I would suggest just uh, face the fact that you might have to replace it every year. What did the other person say?
Let me find that in the chat. I think they recommended a particular link. Let me see.
Ah, right. So there's
Ah,
somewhere you can go for a particular bird fit
yeah, so
nest
they
box.
recommended the Nest Box company who
Right.
have a style of nest boxes for tree creepers, but they mentioned that they tend to nest in tree cavities and bark, so it can be
Yeah.
hard to encourage them into nest boxes.
Yep.
Um,
Well, actually, on that point, then you could make a bark box. Um, that's it's just an open box with absolutely nothing at the front, unlike the open fronted ones uh, for the robin and blue tits have got a little piece across the front to shelter. The bark ones are like that, but you put a big piece of bark over it so that there's an entranceway at the bottom where the bark curves. Yeah, if you can picture what I'm trying to say. Uh, you have to cover the top of the bark so that rain doesn't get in, and then the birds will go up under the bark in the gap and build their nest on the platform inside. So yes, I hadn't thought. Yes, I'd forgotten about that type. But if there's somewhere that sells them specifically, then yes, I'd recommend you go and have a look there.
that's great, thank you. It's good to get different opinions and advice on those types of things, isn't there? I think that is it for all our questions. We've got lots of thank yous for an excellent webinar in the chat. And I'd just like to second that as well and say thank you, Graham, for your time, for all the great information that you've shared with us all today. And thank you to everyone for showing up today as well.
Yep, thanks for listening to me wittering on. And I say go and enjoy the sunshine and see if you can find some of these creatures we've just been talking about.